This presentation is what SAFECOM itself puts out. SAFECOM is a program of CISA that, along with the SWICs, the NICSWIC, helps to manage and promote public safety communications progress. So I'd like to just walk through this presentation with you guys, and we'll take some questions at the end. I've been involved in SAFECOM for a little better than 5 years now. I'm an at-large member. SAFECOM has a little better than 60 associations and about 35 at-large members. They associations are anything from the National Association of Sheriffs to well, just anybody you can think of. The Department of Public Works, and now the ARRL has been admitted as an association member to SAFECOM. So you can go to the next slide, please, Dan. So SAFECOM was formed in 2001, and the idea was that the federal government, in their finite wisdom, decided that they needed to be improving intergovernmental or interoperable communications. And they decided that they didn't know enough about it in order to accomplish that mission. So they formed SAFECOM. Go ahead. So a lot of you, this is one of the products that we have put out. It's called the SAFECOM Interoperability Continuum. And there's 5 lanes in this particular one: the governance, the standard operating procedures, technology, which has 3 separate parts to it, then training, exercises, and usage. The idea of this thing is the further to the right your agency is, the closer to true interoperability they are. And that's one of the hallmarks that we promote on a daily basis, is being interoperable in your community as well as state and local. Go ahead. So SAFECOM is an advisory agency. We don't have any power. We can't make anybody do anything. We write white papers. We point out best practices, that kind of stuff. And our goal is to improve public safety communications across all the borders, whether it's local, regional, tribal states, tribal, state, territorial, international. We work a lot with Canada and Mexico, believe it or not, and it's a pretty good deal. We also work across agencies, and the federal government, of course, is one of the most difficult ones to deal with, by the way. And so one of the things that I'm very impressed with this group is the people that they've gathered up. And so they've got a lot of really smart guys in the room. They recruited me to be the lowest common denominator, I'm pretty sure. Dan, go ahead. So here's a small part of the groups that the associations that belong there. There's a guy that's from the Port of Houston, for instance, and the National Association of EMTs, International Association of Chiefs of Police, APCO has a representative. Just on and on and on. There's no end to the number of people that will show up at these meetings, and they all are invited to talk. They're all invited to tell us what their thoughts are and what they've done that solved a problem that somebody else might have. And I'm very proud to be involved just in the room with those guys. You'll learn a lot just being there and listening to them. Next slide. So there's standing committees in SAFECOM. Everybody that's a member has to be on at least 2 committees, and the standing, as well as maybe some of the task force. You've got just all kinds of opportunities to serve and to learn things. The 4 different standing committees are governance, funding and sustainment, and then technology policy, and then education and outreach. Now I'm on the Education and Outreach Committee as well as the Technology Policy. Now inside the Governance Committee, there's the Membership Working Group. So they decide who's going to be a member and how to recruit them and all that kind of thing. And then there's the Cybersecurity Working Group as well. And we do lend our expertise to people that are having cybersecurity issues. And we've learned a lot about that over the last 3 or 4 years, by the way, and actually helped do some response to some cybersecurity issues. The Technology Policy Committee has got a working group, the ICAM sub-working group, and ICAM stands for, I can't remember that. It's something to do with credentialing. And the idea there is how can we as a group or an individual prove who they are when they interface with somebody else, that kind of thing. And then a group that affects a lot of the population in the United States is the Next Generation 911 Working Group. Here in Arkansas, for instance, the NG 911 is a big deal because our PSAPs are all migrating over to that. They're also consolidating PSAPs, and that's proved to be quite a task. And they've had a lot of good advice from SAFECOM. Now, also underneath the executive board, there's the Communications Section Task Force, which I can tell you, Communications Section Task Force is who worked with FEMA to get the new ICT, the guidance that got ham radio named in the incident command system, the Oxcom group, and all that kind of thing. I'm very happy to be involved with that, by the way. There's also the Incident Communications Advisory Council, Information Sharing Framework Task Force. That was hard to say. P25 Compliance Assessment Program, which that's a very complicated group of individuals. They do a complicated job. And then the User Needs Task Force also reports back to the executive board. Okay, next slide. So the Governance Committee, we'll go through and tell you what each one of these do. They focus on the governance of the entire program, and they manage the membership and develop the programmatic resources. They set up the meetings for us. They make sure everything's running. They help us if we have a little logistical problems, like we missed our flight, something like that. They make sure that everything is good to go on that kind of deal. They build the governance charter, and they update that thing periodically. The strategic plan is updated almost every year, I believe, and they do a report to Congress as necessary. I'm not sure what the frequency on it, but I think it's every 2 years. Not sure. Next slide. The Funding and Sustainment Committee. Now remember that nothing happens without money, especially when you're talking about public safety stuff. Seems like our elected officials may buy a system, but then not give you any money to do maintenance or sustainment of the thing. These guys help find money and look for innovative ways to fund and do what the public safety people need to do. We got here in Arkansas, we got some good advice from those guys, and we actually passed a tax that goes to our statewide radio system based on what these guys had told us. So we're just very happy about that. All these papers that we're showing you here, these white papers and newsletters and such, are all available on the internet. By the way, you can go look all that up if you're interested in seeing some of the products that we've been able to produce. Next slide. The Technology Policy Committee is one of them this is what I would rather do than any of the rest of them, to tell you the truth, because we get the chance to look at new technologies before they actually, sometimes before they come on the market. which is very interesting to see how that could be interfaced into what is already going on a public safety arena. And we do our very best to pick and choose the best ones that we think that would do some good and do something about promoting it. For instance, Steve Waterman's very familiar with the Nashville bombing. It happened just down the road from his house, where the bomb went off and killed the phone system for forever in every direction. And so we're actually able to get some experts to talk with us, tell us what happened, what didn't happen, what could have happened. And we wrote a paper about that. Now, when I say write a paper, we don't sit down with a pen and pencil and then send each other ideas and all that stuff. We talk about what is the right thing to include. And then the government has people that know what they're doing about writing and can spell, which turns out is important. And they actually produce those papers for us. And so the one, that paper on the right hand side was particularly interesting. The approach for developing an interoperable information sharing framework was a huge, broad overview on how to get started in your community on doing that. Now, I think that paper may be out of date right now because, at least in my world, it is, we're past doing that already. Everything has been accomplished that was in that paper. Next slide. The Education and Outreach Committee, I'm on that as well because I do have a interest in teaching, and we do our very best to promote SAFECOM. That's the outreach part. And the education is that we do our best to help people understand what SAFECOM's mission, goals, and priorities are, as well as provide instructional material to people from the decision maker on down to the boots on the ground, the guy that does the soldering, that owns the soldering iron and knows what solder smoke smells like. Give them something that they can look at to help understand where we're trying to go with this. And the next slide. So the executive board, there's a bunch of people on it. The chair is elected. The first vice chair and second vice chair are elected as well. And then these other guys are the committee chairs. While they are elected to their different committee, they are then on the board by virtue of them being on as the chair of that committee. And then they elect 4 people that are just board members, and those positions are open to anybody that's a member of SAFECOM. So let's see, let me think about this a minute. The chair, his name is Jerry Reardon. He's a fire chief of a fire department in Massachusetts. And I'm not going to be able to tell you what it is, but it might be Cambridge. I'm not 100% sure. And then the 2 vice chairs, I believe, are both at-large members. So that there's just no telling who you're going to get, what expertise is out there that might get elected. It's just it's a great thing. Go right ahead. Go ahead, Dan. Here we go. Oh, it is Cambridge. There he is, Jerry Reardon. This might be a kind of an old picture of him, but Chief Reardon is a great guy. He's smart as a whip, and there's pictures of him up on roofs installing antennas. So he's not just a figurehead. He's a great guy. The first vice chair is Chief Chris Lombard. He's in Seattle. He's in the fire department there, and he is probably one of the smartest guys I know, and surely is an up and coming star as far as working in the public safety communications world. I think Chief Lombard is going to be somebody to watch in the future for sure. And Chief Jay Copstein there is who actually was the champion that got the ARRL brought into SAFECOM. While it was my idea, Chief Copstein carried the water, and we owe him a great debt for shepherding that membership in there. That had never been done before. So there you go. Next slide, please. Board members, Chief Aiken from the NIPSTIC, Anthony Colanado is a really smart guy. He's retired NYFD. Remember, he was a captain. Sheriff Fitzgerald there is a representative of the National Sheriff's Association. And Charlie Sasser is from Atlanta, Georgia, and his association is National Technology Directors. And he's a really smart guy when it comes to the cybersecurity stuff. We're lucky to have him. He doesn't know dirt about radios, but he is smart on computers. Next slide. So the committee chairs, governance is George Pereira. He belongs to the Miami-Dade Police Department. And these all four are really smart guys, by the way. Education outreach is Michael Davis. Michael runs the Ulster County 911 Communications Center there in New York. Lloyd Mitchell is in South Carolina. He belongs to the Forest Conservation Association. And he's got a tough job because he's doing that funding and sustainment stuff. But he's been a huge boon to the organization altogether. Phil Mann runs the technology policy group, and he belongs to the American Public Works Association. He's a director of public works for a town in Florida. And what is it? I can't think of what it is. It's not Clearwater. I don't know. That's not important, I don't guess. But in any case, he is a very smart guy as well. I can't say enough good about all four of these guys. They're all really bright and dedicated individuals and have their heart in the right spot, if you ask me. Next slide. So here's some resources that you can look for if you're interested. The funding products, technology products, governance and planning stuff. The membership, if you want to see who all's in the thing. There is a blog that kind of sort of tells you what went on at meetings. It's a little bit of a sanitized version because they don't put any dirty jokes in there that are told. I know that for sure because I told one, it didn't make it into it, so I know for sure it doesn't happen. And there you go. Next slide. One more, I think. Is that all? Dan, one more slide? Or is that all?
You're muted, Dan.
I'm not now, and I'm trying to see what happened here.
Yeah, there you go. While I don't think that's all that interesting slide right here, this does show that they actually pay attention to social media. Twitter, of course, is not going to be Twitter. What is it going to X? Is that what it's going to be? So this slide will have to be rebuilt a little bit, but they do pay attention to the social media, and they have people that look at it and will answer questions. I wouldn't put any questions on there that are of immediate nature, but generally they reply. So something for you to know about. I think that's the next to last slide, Dan. I was right. So if you have questions, you're welcome to email SAFECOM Governments they do respond to that in a fairly rapid fashion, probably by the next business day anyway. And something that I hope you guys are interested in. If it's not, well, I wasted 40 minutes of your time. And I'd be happy to take questions.
And can we obtain documents like the National Response Framework and the National Communication Plan and other documents that the federal government puts out regarding emergency services through SAFECOM?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I believe all that stuff is there in resources. The NECP, of course, the NECP is being updated right now, National Emergency Communications Plan. Right now until September the 15th, I think is when it is. They're also doing what's called the Strategic National Survey, where all the public safety entities have a huge survey. It's about, I don't know, 10 or 12 pages worth of questions that they ask in order to find the current state of public safety communications, as well as what is being planned. And the goal, of course, is to maintain their awareness of what's going on. That's a good question.
Gene got his hand up there. Gene?
Yeah, hi everybody. Gene from Killeen, Texas, in case you're just getting in. Great presentation, number one, a lot of useful information. Now, obviously I'm a ham radio operator. I'm also a member of the North Texas division, not division, but North Texas Aries group. I'm also a card carrying member of Texas Races. Am I eligible to join SAFECOM in any of those capacities?
Well, they have an open enrollment from time to time. Actually, what they do, Gene, is they do a advertisement for an at-large member when they have a hole. And if I resign tomorrow, well, then you'd be eligible to apply. Now, there's a little bit of a process that you go through. They do a background check on you and make sure you're not a bad guy, for one thing. And they also want to talk to you about your experience and what your relevance to and what you could contribute to the efforts. I will tell you that I'm the very first person that they've ever had that his focus was amateur radio. And that's one of the big deals that's why I wanted to get the ARRL involved, is because I was the only one and I thought I wanted some help. And I'm very proud that Josh Johnson will be coming to Coral Gables in September for a meeting of the Education and Outreach Committee. I'm looking very much forward to having somebody besides me speak up on behalf of the amateur radio community. Now, I can tell you that there's nobody that is against ham radio. They just think that we're not as necessary as we once were. And I like to tell them, if man can break it, or if man can make it, then God can break it. And that's where radio guys can come along and help you. So that's that.
Very true. Now, as far as like membership goes, are you talking about a leadership position or just a general member operator type of capacity? Be there when needed.
Now, SAFECOM is just an advisory committee, so we don't do anything about doing anything. I think like you're thinking. I may not be understanding what you're asking for sure, but they don't. We just don't do that kind of thing. We're like I said, we're just an advisory committee, and the stuff that we do takes months and years to go to come out. Something that we write 2 years ago. By the time it gets through all the federal gobbledygook, the Paperwork Reduction Act, on and on and on, it takes a long time to come out. So somebody that's interested in being involved on an actual response or something like that, this ain't the place for them to be.
Okay, well, I understand that. And is there a specific, I don't know if the application is right, but if I want to get involved with SAFECOM, Joe Amateur Radio Operator, how do I do it?
You don't, to be honest with you. It's not an operational entity.
Right.
The idea is that there has to be an opening, and at that point, it's a kind of they advertise it in the Federal Register rather, and you then go fill out a little questionnaire, and then they call you and talk to you. And if they like you, it's the same as getting a job, actually, making a job application. That's what I went through. We were coming back from, I want to think we were coming back from Maine when they called me on the telephone. I mean, it'd been months since I put this paperwork in. I'd forgotten about it altogether. And Chief Copstein called and asked me a bunch of questions to get me started on this thing. So it was pretty entertaining while I was driving down the road, trying to figure out what was the correct answer, what it was that he needed to see. You might think about joining up with the FEMA RECWIG there in Texas. They're very active down there, by the way, and they could use some help from amateur radio.
Okay. What was that Texas thing again?
Texas RECWIG, or the FEMA Region 6 RECWIG. It's the Regional Emergency Communications Coordinating Working Group. If you look on the FEMA region, no kidding, and it's a goofy what name, but every FEMA region has one, and there, if you Google that, you'll come to it eventually, and the guy's name that's in charge of the group there is Joe Garcia, and he can help you out.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, my friend. I appreciate the information that you've provided to my questions and to this briefing, and I appreciate everybody else on this group. And I'm going to be telling other hams in the area about RATPAC, and hopefully they'll be filling up the screen with their names and call signs soon. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Barry, what we got in questions?
Let's see. What about law enforcement on university security and other vulnerable institutions like hospitals and nursing homes? Are they and should they be included in interoperability efforts? In a hostile situation, they meet the individuals with critical information. That's from Victor and Everett.
Yes, they're represented. While we might not have seen their logo on that screen there, the American Hospital Association, I believe, is a representative. The guy's name is Paul, and he's in Utah, by the way. So they do have representatives in that. Of course, the National Association of EMTs is represented as well. There's a lot of associations that I had no idea existed until I joined SAFECOM. I've learned a lot about infrastructure and people that they do not have to be a first responder organization necessarily to be in SAFECOM. It's very interesting.
That's all from.
Okay, thank you, Barry. I don't see any more hands. How about there's some hands out there? Dan, you always have a question. What you got over there in California? Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was going to ask JM about two things. That slide that has all of the SAFECOM, is it all of the SAFECOM members? And if it's not, is there some place we can we locate in SAFECOM what all the agencies and industry partners are participating in SAFECOM? And
Yes, the answer to
just
that is yes, that's on the website.
okay. And that's just a lead to the real question, which is at one point you mentioned, and I think it was when you were talking about the technical work, or I don't know what it would be other than advising what's needed for technical standards. Are the experts drawn from government agencies, academia, or industry partners, or all of the above?
All the above. It's a cross section. This is, when you think about who would be best to give you advice on what you want to know, this group that the federal government has formed, I don't know whose idea this was for sure, Dan, but I'm going to tell you, this is just about the best idea that the government's ever had. As far as my world, public safety, I'm telling you that these are the experts. These are guys that know what they're doing, and we hear about things that screwed up. We hear about successes, and we are very lucky to have that level of expertise and experience across the board on just almost any question you want to ask. There's somebody that knows the right, true answer.
Okay, and I didn't notice, but I'm going to guess that there are no regulatory agencies like the FCC. They are?
We have them as subject matter experts, and if we
Okay.
have something that we want to know about, they're a phone call away.
Walking, talking CFRs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
All right, thanks a lot. I'll spend more time there after your explanation about what it is.
Sure.
And so 9/11, there used to be FEMA, and then 9/11 happened.
Yep.
And out of that, FEMA was never a department in the executive branch, was it? It was always, what was FEMA under before DHS came about? I'm talking about the birth events for the various agencies that seem to be centered around SAFECOM.
I'm gonna have to let an old guy, Steve Waterman probably knows that answer to that question. I want to think that FEMA was worked directly for the president, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember that. That's a good question, Dan.
We're going to call on Steve next, so go ahead. Dan?
No, I'm waiting for Steve to answer the question.
Well, okay, Steve.
Oh, I don't know about that question. I could tell you that CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, has many tentacles. The Emergency Communication Division, which provides these courses like OXCOM, and writes documents. They really advise and educate and fund, but they don't respond. They're not a responding organization. They're not operational. They don't go out and assist in with the National Stafford Act, and if the federal government's called to participate in a disaster, they don't really provide an operational aspect of that. FEMA does that. And so the best way for an amateur radio operator that I can see so far to get involved, unless you have some other aspect of your skill set that they could use, like being a fire chief or whatever, my advice would be to write your ARRL director and ask him, now that the ARRL is involved in SAFECOM, how can you become involved in some meaningful capacity to assist with that process and see what they come up with. They probably have no idea, but that if enough people write, they'll come up with an idea. And so this organization, this SAFECOM organization, has a group called the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators. Every state has a SWIC, a statewide interoperability coordinator, and that group has a lot to say about what goes on in our world of emergency communication. And there's a lot you can read about that on the website. In addition, the major documents that control how everybody responds to emergency communication is also documents like the National Response Framework, etc. All of that's available on SAFECOM. That's more important for us to look at than to try to get involved with what JM was talking about tonight, in my opinion.
Okay,
Someone posted the history of FEMA in the chat, and April 1st, 1979 was when FEMA was actually created under President Carter.
There you go.
okay. I'd like to remind everybody, if you got a camera, when you come on, when you turn your camera on, it helps for the presentation a lot.
My hair isn't combed.
He's probably not wearing his shirt.
Okay, you had your hand up. What you got there, Steve?
That was what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize I was answering a question.
Okay.
I just made a comment because I see people wanting to become involved with this, and that your involvement would be to, in my opinion, to get on there and read some of these documents that control everything, the National Incident Management System and how it works. It's all there. A lot of executive orders that, like for the shares program and other aspects are all found in the SAFECOM library.
One of the things that you guys can do, if you think of something that you believe needs to be, after you've looked at the website, if you think of something that needs to be addressed, tell me about it so that I can take it to the committees. The governor's committee will decide which one of the working committees needs to look at it and go from there. That happens all the time. So that's one of my jobs is to do that on your behalf.
Okay, Dan, you got your hand up again. You want to take it away?
No, I just wanted to say, this reminds me of 25, 30 years ago, federal agencies collaborated, even between the executive branch and DOD. And there was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't necessarily visible in each agency's mandate. So had there been something like SAFECOM, it could have served as a coordination agency for lots of interagency details that really made stuff happen much faster. If you let an agency do all of its own work, it gets wound up in itself and forgets who they're serving. But taken together, I don't even know how many federal agencies there are, but in my short 37-year career, I was detailed into at least 7 or 8 others. And that provided more education while taking advantage of the skill sets I could bring them than anything else that occurred during my career, except very expensive training that was needed so I could, stay above water, largely in terms of the cybersecurity aspect. So that's my 18 cents for today.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. You got a follow up on that there, JM?
Well, I agree with him. It's a matter of, one of the things that the ECD, the Emergency Communications Division, does is they work with national level events, like the presidential inauguration, for instance, or a Super Bowl, or there's a thresholds of the number of people that are there and what kind of deal is going on. And then they help them write the communications plan, serve as a COML. That is one thing that they do. They go after an event or before an event, not after it. Like Steve said, they're not operational other than just going to try to work out things with the locals. So I think that's a great thing. That's kind of sort of what Dan's talking about. They help across the board. Yep.
Okay. Victor, you got your hand up.
Good evening and thank you. Came across an interesting circumstance, and it really does go to communication. One thing I noticed through the pandemic was people wear masks. And there's an issue with people who are hard of hearing. You get in situations of briefings, discussions, and a lot of people who either for professional reasons aren't declared as hard of hearing, people don't know it, they may or may not wear hearing aids, but there's a real dependency to lip read. And there are clear masks available. And I'm working on that right now, that agencies and counselors, caseworkers, communicators need to have those available when the circumstances require it. I don't know if that's something the education committee can handle and pass on to other people, but yeah, just because we're doing a briefing and we're all, or you all are, top level chiefs, whatever, there may be people that aren't quite getting the full message because the message is obscured. And I will throw that out because people are still opting to wear masks. And my own gut feeling is that we're going to be wearing masks again in another 5 to 10 years. And we need to be thinking about how we're going to improve that communication. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Well, I can't argue with that. There's just no telling what's going to go on. And points well taken. I don't know that anybody's thought about that too much. At some of our meetings, we actually have sign language interpreters, and that's something that we may need to think about for the larger groups. That's something to say. I'm with you.
Okay, Barry, how we doing?
We're all set in the chat.
Okay. Any more hands? Okay, how about some open comments? Anybody got any comments out there? Oh, wait a minute, Dan's got his hand up. Go for it, Dan.
That last comment reminded me that for the latter half of my career, I'd go to at least one meeting a year where there were not only sign language interpreters, but there was a lip reader specialist sitting away from the table taking notes the whole time. And I thought that was a real interesting thing because those tended to be the most meaningful meetings where a lot of information was exchanged that might not otherwise have had a conduit. And the fact that somebody was taking down notes on the sidebar discussions going on around the table took a little bit of, it took a while to get used to that. But I think some of you will know what was going on there.
Gene had a question in the chat. Does SAFECOM have a separate budget from FEMA HLS?
Yes, SAFECOM does not work for FEMA.
Okay.
Where does SAFECOM get their budget from?
Department of Homeland Security, actually directly. So FEMA works for DHS, CISA works for DHS, And so it's two separate agencies. Now, here in the last 2 years, we've been collaborating a lot more with FEMA than we did, especially the NIMS Integration Center. And that's how that came around. That's the first time in 22 years that FEMA has changed the incident command system. And you can't imagine how proud I am to have had a small part of the being able to affect that, to be able to push hard enough to move a glacier is a big deal.
And you didn't sink. Okay.
Right.
Dan, yeah, you had your hand up, Dan.
Well, yeah, I was just going to add his comment, working hard enough to push the glacier. Answered my question.
Okay, we'll let you off the hook. Are there any more comments out there?
Tom made a comment that he has a remote microphone that goes through his hearing aid, so it can plug into an earphone jack. So that would help if someone would have hard of hearing.
You know, from my experience in meetings, there's some people who are very conscientious of their eyesight or the hearing or whatever, and they rather not wear hearing aids or even glasses when they need to. And so that's a human problem, but that is there out there.
Yep.
So SAFECOM isn't dependent on HSIN for interoperability, is it?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Is SAFECOM dependent on HSIN?
Hisn is a, this is between me, you, and the fence post. I hope nobody else is listening. I don't use Hisn. I find it just about, I don't know what or who came up with that, but I don't know what they were thinking. We don't use it in our day-to-day work. I know that anytime anybody talks about needing to do some file sharing or something, we do something else besides Hisn. Now it's a resource. That's where Chasm is stored. The communication asset gizmo that they've got, it does not help me at all, to be honest.
Well, it's going through the throes of a transition, I think, from SharePoint to what's the an Adobe product. So
It could be.
Yeah, they're working hard on making it worse, I think.
Those guys are good at it.
Okay, Tom, you got your hand up. You want to take it away? Tom, you're muted. Tom?
But I wanted to expand a little bit on the comment. I know there are some people who don't want to see people to see them with hearing aids and like that, but that remote mic, I can set it in the middle of the table or up at the speaker's podium. I ask them first, of course. I don't butt through. I'm there early to make sure it's okay. And then I can hear everything the person managing the meeting can hear. And if they're not talking loud enough for that person to hear, they'll tell them, please speak up. And then I hear it. And so it can be used as a microphone. It can be used as a pickup from a jack. It's a very versatile gimmick. So I just wanted to be sure that people know that there are things out there, if you've got hearing aids or other problems like that, that are actually manageable in cost, that can help a lot. You just have to get together with your state assistance agency to know what they are, because they'll have a great list.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom. That's good advice. Gene, you got your hand up?
Yeah, this is really probably a silly question. But when it comes to amateur radio operators moving through the various levels of MCOM involvement, whether it be just being a neighborhood ham radio operator, up to like Aries, there may be Races, Mars. Is there a point in which somebody says, okay, we got it, but somebody else trumps you when it comes to information flow? I know that's a very vague question. I apologize.
So our idea, especially since we've got Oxcom on the ground now, is that the served agency has somebody that they report to. For instance, the county's going to report to the state's going to report to the FEMA region, that kind of thing. And those people have to be recognized, vetted, and approved beforehand. And at whatever level you're going to be working at for that served agency, there's not anything, unless you're doing what would be situational awareness for a local emergency manager, for instance. You want to tell him that the road's covered with flood water at such and such, or there's 1,000 people gathered around this corner down here. That would, you wouldn't necessarily need to be vetted for that kind of thing, but otherwise we're gonna try to insist that you are a known entity, because false information or disinformation is something that we worry about. That's some of the questions I had to ask, or rather answer, was how they wanted to know, how are we going to know that this report is real? And my answer is, if it jives with other reports that you're getting, it probably is real. If it's a red herring, or in the medical field we call it a zebra. If you hear a thundering herd, it's probably something besides, and there's one zebra in it, well, then you know that that's not a herd of zebras. It's something else. So we take everything that comes from amateur radio with a grain of salt, just like we take other reports, unless we're aware of who that person is or where that report comes from. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes, it does, very much so. And I think I pretty much knew how you're going to answer this, or anybody else is going to answer it, but I just need to hear it anyway. And I'll do my part as I can, as logically as I can, as skilled as I can, based upon my license level. But thanks, you were spot on. Thanks a lot, man.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you very much. Tom, you got your hand up again. You want to take it away?
Yes, sir. One of the things that was just asked about, we have the same problem in Skywarn. I've been very active in that in a long time. How do you vet the report? Well, the way we do it is pretty simple. They have to have taken a certain course. They have to have a spotter number. And if a spotter that's supposed to be in Arlington tries to give me a report from Gaithersburg, well, I got a couple of questions to ask. And usually it's, yeah, I was out at my mother's or whatever. And usually they, according to the training, they have the good sense to say off location, because part of what works is that the spotter number nails the location without a lot of chatter. But if you're going to take reliable information from people, you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to vet them. You can't do an open market. That's not a place where that works. Back to the net.
All
Yeah,
right.
I agree with that, and that's exactly what I'm saying is that we want to know who is going to be working with us ahead of time. That's part of being trained. We want everybody that's involved in an organization to have his NIMS training. We want you to be familiar with your spot and know what it is that you can do and shouldn't do, and that's where we are.
I think the bottom line that's being said here is, we want you involved, be involved. Go to the meeting, let people know who you are, get to know who they are, set up a trust level. Otherwise, if you just go showing up there, here, I'm Joe Blow and I'm here to help you, don't expect a lot. Okay, Dan.
Before you go, Dan, let me just tack on to that, please. The amateur radio community has suffered for a long time because people would show up with a portable radio, a brand new portable radio, or maybe 4 or 5 on their belt. And because they had that radio, they believed that they were in charge. And the folks that were actually in charge had them run off. And we've suffered from that sort of institutional memory for a considerable period of time because of that. It's one of the things that we're teaching in Oxcom is that we're not in charge. We're here to serve in whatever capacity we're able to do it, and at the will and pleasure of that served agency. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was dispatched to an earthquake in California a few years back by the Red Cross, and the position I held there for them, I ended up having to get security, remove a bunch of amateurs that just would not take no for an answer. He's just hanging around, causing more problems, and it was a bad scene. I was embarrassed for amateur radio. Needless to say, I didn't tell him I was ham. Okay, yeah. Gene, your hand's up.
Yeah, one more time. That should be it for the night. Sorry to bore people, but retired Army Signal Corps. I've worked at various staff level positions, and one of which was a operations planning NCOIC in Korea. And we went through various scenarios, war gaming, all that kind of good stuff. And when it came to the very beginning, what's the difference between information and intelligence? Information could be looked at, it's a cloudy sky. Intelligence would be, it's a cloudy sky, but baseball size hail is falling down. So information doesn't necessarily mean intelligence, but intelligence is formed because of information. And it takes people to understand the difference between the two and kind of like sift it out.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, Dan, you had your hand up. You took it back away again. Did you change your mind?
No, but for Gene, you haven't heard it yet this evening, so I'm going to say it. And based on the experience you just said you had, you'll understand it. In addition to whatever technology you can bring to the table, you have to earn the trusting relationships so people will accept what you're telling them. And that just comes from being there and being willing to do anything and everything that furthers the common cause. And if you make a mistake, you own it and fix it. But you got to build the trust with the people you're working with.
I absolutely agree with you. When I was there in Korea, it was when I guess Dad detonated his first nuke bomb, and there was some tense moments. And trying to separate information and intelligence was pretty tense. It made for some long days and even longer nights. But I understand what you're saying. The people that I had to report to or brief, they better know that they assumed that I knew what I was talking about. And sometimes, depending upon which staff section, they understood, sometimes they didn't, but did my job. Hopefully, everybody lived happily ever after.
Okay, and hopefully they're still alive. How are we doing in chat there, Barry?
We're all set in chat.
All right, appreciate you watching that. Back to you, JM.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight, and you asked some good questions. I hope what I had to tell you was interesting enough to dedicate your Thursday evening to it. Again, if you've got any sort of questions, the website is available. My contact information is always available, by the way. My call sign at the ARRL, either or Gordnet, because I'm a past section manager for Arkansas. And I think that if you guys are interested, and if you've got something that you'd like for SAFECOM to look at that would be applicable on a national level, I'd be happy to carry it to them. So I think that's what I've got, boss.
All righty. Well, Dan, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, JM, especially after your presentation this evening, why don't you take up the 24-page ITSL NIMS branch discussion? Because it'd be useful for all of SAFECOM, not just RATPAC and what we're trying to do. I mean, how do I say it? You got to walk into the room with a lot more than just radio capability these days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
ITSL is the roadmap for how to do that.
The ICT, you mean, the ITSL is in it. Yeah, I'm with you. You know, that document is something that we helped write. And let's see, the total time was 13 years. Man.
Yeah, but
So,
it's 24 pages of good information. I'm not used to reading
Yeah.
government documents that are that useful.
well, I think it's
Federal
because,
government.
let me just say that it's because of the SAFECOM influence on FEMA that it was readable.
Okay, any more comments out there? I don't hear any. Barry, we're still okay with
Yeah,
chat?
good chat. Sorry about missing part of this, but we had a thunderstorm and I lost power.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I'm going to say 73s, everyone. And
Hang on, Dan.
good night, 73s.
What was
Thank you
that
all
last
for coming.
acronym, ITSL?
Say again, Victor?
What was that last acronym, that page, that document, ITSL?
Yeah,
Information Technology Service Unit Leader. That's a new position in the ICS structure.
It's
Okay, thank you.
a newly defined resource. It's
Yeah.
probably not going to just be a position.
Yeah, that it's going to have its own branch before it's over with. Because computers on, everybody's got to do email and everything's got to be on a record now. And so that's the way that they're going to go about it. We got to have somebody that understands networking. We got to have somebody that can troubleshoot programs. We got to have somebody that knows how to make a computer work in that sort of environment. And that's why the ITSL people were included.
Okay. Unless there's something more out there, I'm going to say 73s, everybody. See you next week. Been a pleasure. Great presentation, JM. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.